Guys, welcome back. Another episode of the Average Money Podcast. We're actually recording this days after the first episode launched. And wow, the feedback, guys, has been so incredible. And a couple days ago, we put out a poll asking you guys if you had any questions for us that you kind of wanted to hear on the podcast. And we kept seeing something come up over and over again. And that was debt and how important debt is really to the net worth. And also, you know, good debt versus bad debt. And I think that's a good spot for us to start because that's kind of where our financial journey start. If you don't know who we are, my name is Brad Finn. I am joined today, fresh off of no tonsils, fresh off of a vacation ruined by a hurricane. JJ Buckner, buddy, what? I hope you're drinking. What are you drinking? What's going on,
dude?
man?
That's the first thing I need right now is I need to crack open a brewski. Today I'm drinking a good old Corona Extra. Boy, you said it best, Brad. I mean, to be honest, man, the past couple weeks have been, I'll just say it, they've been hell. It has been one thing after another. I got my tonsils removed. I've been MIA from talking for about 2 weeks. I was looking forward to this vacation with the family down in Florida. We went down to Pensacola, drove about 11 hours from home to get there with a 5-month-old and a 3-year-old. Any of you out there listening who have kids, you know how that goes.
Dude, I won't even take my kids like 20 minutes to my in-laws, like without proper medication. I do not understand how you drove from Missouri all the way down to Pensacola, Florida. That is an insane. But you said Mason travels pretty well, right?
Mason's a very good traveler. My 3-year-old, yeah, he's good. You give him some dinosaurs and an iPad, and he's set. It's the 5-month-old that was a struggle. The good thing was going down there, though. We had a wedding we had to stop into, and that kind of broke up. It was halfway down in Mississippi, so that wasn't so bad. But the problem was we got down there, and good old BITCH herself, Hurricane Sally, wanted to show up, and we got to enjoy the beach for about 2 hours, and unluckily, had to turn around, and we voluntarily evacuated because they were talking about closing all the bridges out of Pensacola.
Mm-hmm.
And we did not want to be stuck there with 2 kids and possibly having a power outage and no food and flooding. And so we ended up having to cut the vacation about 3 days short and was only down there for about 2 days after driving,
Now you said the hurricane life can get real here in New York. You said, I think I was speaking to you the other day when we were talking about when it was just like a tropical storm. You're like, haven't really ever experienced the hurricane. I was like, it could get interesting.
Never. No, I'm good old Midwest boy, man. All we got to worry about here is tornadoes. So they said something about like 8 to 12 storm surge. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is our condo going to flood? And we're on the 8th floor. Like, how high does this water really get? It was such an unfortunate event because Mason was looking forward to get on the beach and swimming in the ocean. And when we got down there, the swells were too big for him to get in, the rip currents or rip tides or whatever that's called, where it can like suck you out or whatever.
Yep.
He had to watch out for those, and the waves were too big for him to get in. So luckily the condo we stayed at had a pool, and then tonsils, that was a whole ordeal, man. Oh my goodness. That was luckily I'm back to about 98% now. So we haven't been able to record a podcast episode because I've been MIA trying to heal this damn throat of mine. But
yeah, silver lining, man. You're supposed to still be on vacation, so at least you got your Corona. I'm actually drinking.
I'm hustling, bud.
Yeah, exactly. I said you're home. I put you right to work. Right. That we got to get right to work. The listeners need to hear about our opinions about debt. I am joining you with probably, I've said it once and I'll say it again, the most underrated lager in the world. And that is a good old fashioned PBR. It was my dad's drink of choice. Every time I drink a PBR now, I think of dad, but I was in the store. I was like, you know what? I'm going to go PBR tonight. And right next to it was Natty. I almost got your boy Natty Light, but I couldn't do it, buddy. I couldn't do it. I had to go right to PBR. So if you're not driving and you find yourself in the situation where you can crack open a beer, let's talk about debt. And I think, like I mentioned earlier, this is a good place to start because for us, we both started our debt-free journeys we started our personal finance journeys with a little bit of debt. So I think, JJ, I think I kind of know what your debt was. To be honest, we never really went that far into debt. We were always trying to put
No,
the
we didn't never really talk about numbers.
yeah, we were always
Not that
trying to
much.
put the cart before the horse and get right to investing and right to real estate. We never really even talked about the basics. And I said before I pressed record to JJ, like, I'm actually going to learn a little something about JJ tonight. So, what was the debt situation when you actually started caring about or said to yourself, I need to pay off debt? And why did you think that was important to you? Like, was that like a first step, or was that part of a bunch of initial steps that you had when it came to debt?
Yeah, so any of the listeners who listened to the last episode, you guys know I'm kind of always been like a natural saver. So I've always been, I would say, relatively good with my money on the saving portion. The investing portion, I didn't really know. I kind of had to teach myself as I grew, my financial knowledge. But I really started my debt journey when I graduated college. I had about $60,000 in student loan debt. Now that was between my wife and I. We got married right after her and I both graduated college in 2014, and we combined our bank accounts and combined our debts and all that. We had about $60,000 worth of debt totally combined, and all of that was student loans. We didn't have any car payments or credit cards or anything like that. No medical bills, luckily. Luckily it was just the student loans we had to worry about. And I guess it's always been kind of natural to me to hate owing someone money,
Okay.
rather that be family, a friend, the bank, whatever it may be. It's something that, like, honestly, I think about when I go to sleep at night. It's just something that digs at me. And I knew right away that was something I wanted to get away with,
Okay.
get gone. So I started researching, and I found the whole Dave Ramsey thing, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit into this episode. But the total amount of debt that we had as a couple, my wife and I, was $60,000 in student.
And there's a little hidden message there that I think needs to be brought up, or at least I would love to hear you address, is the conversation that I have with people in consulting and things like that. And that is your spouse's debt your debt? And when
Mm.
did you guys talk about that said debt together? Like, was it ever a conversation like, hey, before we get married, we got to tackle this debt? Did you have to make sure you're on the same page? What do you say to people that are maybe dating and getting pretty serious, and one's the saver and one's a spender, or one person cash flowed their school and their spouse maybe didn't, and they're kind of like where's that gray area for you, and what talk did you have with your spouse? Because me personally, we never we were married and down the road before we started talking about debt. So like I didn't care what kind of debt she
Right,
had.
right.
We combined our finances instantly when we got married. I think that was something that was pretty important to us. But did you guys discuss the student loan debt before marriage, or how'd you guys handle that?
Oh, we're getting on a touchy subject here. This is good though, because this is the stuff that doesn't really get talked about much, marriage and money and all that. This is stuff that's very important, especially for newer couples out there who are maybe engaged at this point in time, or are thinking about engagement and getting ready to get that next step of becoming married. To answer your question first, yes, Lindsay and I did talk about money. We talked about our situations, our debts. I would say I'm not anywhere near I was whenever I was in college and Lindsay and I were dating, to where I am now, like financially stable, and the knowledge I knew. Like back in college, I just was all about drinking beer and passing my classes. That's really all I cared about. Like I said, I've always been that natural saver, but still, it was one of those things where I didn't see it as that big a deal.
Right.
But once Lindsay and I started getting serious around my senior year or junior year of college, we started talking about all those things:
Okay.
religion, money, how we're going to raise our kids, and to all of the newly engaged couples out there. I think that is something you have to talk about.
Yeah.
You have to. Now, can it work if it doesn't get talked about? Yes, but I think you are much better off if you bring it up before the marriage happens, because some of you may not think religion's important or anything like that. And if both spouses, the man and wife, or whoever, wife and wife, whatever it is, if you got to figure out what works for both of you. But as far as religion, finances go, it's all about opening up the discussion and seeing what the other person thinks. and kind of seeing where their thoughts are, where they're at, what their goals and aspirations are. So, yes, Lindsay and I did talk about finances, and we knew all we each other had was our debts. Luckily, Lindsay was also a natural born saver, I guess. She
Okay.
was a kind of a frugal gal as well. So it worked well for us. We meshed well that on that aspect. But it was more of, I guess it was just talked about, but it was never really a big conversation until we got married,
Right.
got our big girl, big boy jobs, and we're like, okay, now what do we do?
What I hear too, and that's super important if people aren't picking up on it, is the fact that it's the talking, it's the communication that's really the big deal. Like if you're getting serious with somebody and they have a ton of student loan debt or they have a car debt, that shouldn't, the debt itself, I don't think personally should ever be a deal breaker. I think it's more of the communication about that debt. Because you
Mhm.
have debt doesn't make you a bad person. I see so many people chastised because they have debt. Like I had 189,000. We'll get to my story in a second, but I don't think I had that because I was a bad person. Maybe I was just financially illiterate. So you might be getting serious with somebody that maybe just is a little bit financially illiterate, and you just need to have that conversation. It's more about the conversation than the debt piece.
Now, let me flip that on you real quick, Brad.
Go.
What would you say to somebody who has had those conversations with a significant other and they're just not on board financially? They're saying, I'm going to have debt the rest of my life. I'm always going to have a car payment. I'm not worried about paying off my student loans. But then you have the girl or guy that is the soon to be spouse, or maybe they're not engaged yet. Maybe they're just dating. What would you say to that? Because I've had this question pop up a few times, and it's a tough one, to be honest, man. It's really hard.
I think it definitely gets into a personal situation. It's easy from the outside to be like that could be a deal breaker,
Right,
but
right.
but every rose has a thorn, right? And some people can put up with certain things, and there might be compromise. I mean, I've very close friends where I don't think both of them are on the same page as far as money. And do they have an amazing relationship? Yes. Are they great parents? Yes. Are they great friends and brothers? Yes. It doesn't make you a bad person because you have debt. I would say to somebody though that it at least needs to be a deal that breaker that could potentially ruin it, because it hurts and it sucks to take somebody that you love right now that might have a major issue to you. But I can tell you it would suck, at least in my opinion. I think it would suck a lot more if you let it fester for 5 years, 10 years, you brought in kids, and then it becomes a situation where you don't know what the heck is going on.
It's better to nip it in the butt early than let it grow.
Yeah, and also too, maturity is a big deal too. Like
Yes.
when I was 22 years old and somebody would have been like, "Brad, no, you're not allowed to do that." Yeah, we might have broke up, which is probably why I didn't get married at 22 years old. I got married at 35 years old. Maybe call me immature if you want, but there's also that too. There's also like, all right, this isn't a deal breaker for our relationship, but maybe we're going to hold off on marriage for a couple years until maybe we start to see
Right.
in the same picture. I don't think like you have debt, you don't want to talk about it, we're breaking up. Like I don't think it
Yes.
needs to
Yeah.
go that far.
I agree with you on that. I do want to touch on something too, real quick. Is I think you need to know yourself also. Like I think it's very important to understand what your beliefs are and kind of what's your deal breaker. Because maybe Brad back at 22, you weren't worried about it, to where like someone like me, I'll be honest with you, like if I hate to say this, but I know myself and I know how I was back at 24 when Lindsay and I got married. I think I probably would have not been able to ask Lindsay to marry me if she wasn't decent with her finances, because I know myself. I would not be able to sleep at night knowing that Lindsay and I were not on board financially, because it just that I think it I mean, I have to be honest here, that's a deal breaker for me.
Okay.
Um, that's why I think it's so important for you to know yourself and to know what you made a perfect point. You need to know what you can deal with.
Right.
And that would just be something I couldn't deal with, I think.
People ask me all the time, or say to Tara all the time, like, "What do you see in that guy?" And I'm like, maybe it's the jokes. All right, so back back to the 60K. Now, you've said a bunch of times that you hated owing people money. So for you, the paying off the debt, really, you weren't thinking, I want to be a millionaire. You weren't thinking, I want to retire early. You
Right.
weren't thinking fire. You were just thinking, I don't like owing people money. I'm the opposite. Like, I wanted to get out of debt because I saw the potential, and I said I was older. I was
Right.
35 years old. So I was thinking like, all right, I'm getting 35. Do I want to work till I'm 60? That's a lot different than getting right out of college and you don't even think about retirement. And I think, that it goes to show that you could be motivated by anything to succeed. And the major problems that I had early on was trying to establish other people or trying to fall into other people's techniques, trying to fall into one particular method. And if there's anything I've learned about the paying off debt, actually on October 10th, I'll be debt free for 1 year. So I'm about to be 1 year debt free.
Cheers,
And
bud.
thank you. Yeah, thank you. Cheers. More PBR all day. But I think the one thing I learned was that you have to get to your own path in a certain way. You can use the guidance. Like you can call me up and say, Brad, what did you do? What were your pros and cons? But we just saw that we're going to get two completely different answers. JJ is going
Hmm.
to say, why do you want to owe people money? That sucks. Brad's going to say, do you want to retire early? But the end game and the end point is still exactly the same. Your method isn't any better than mine, but the overall umbrella and the picture is just please get out of debt. Now looking back, yeah, you didn't want to owe any people money, but getting out of debt, how monumental was that to your financial success since then?
I guess here's the biggest part for me. When you pay off your debts, especially if you're trying to rapidly pay off your debts. So what I mean by that is you're putting a lot of money towards those debts every single month. Once you pay off that one student loan and then you only have four left, or you pay off a credit card, then you just have medical bills and a car payment, whatever your situation is. When you get those debts paid off, that's more cash in your pocket at the end of the month. That's less risk you have to worry about. That's more things you can do with your money to help grow your finances, more to invest. The freedom that comes with being debt free and not owing anyone any amount of money, it's unexplainable. And I tell people all the time, I have some friends who are about to become debt free minus their mortgage. And I'm so excited for them as a couple to get to where because they've been on this road for I think like over a year now.
Yeah.
And I told them, I said, guys, once it happens, you're gonna feel so free.
And
It's
it's all you can tell
amazing.
people and they don't really
Yes.
know, but
No,
that's
no.
all. It's kind of like when you hear 100 times, like when that baby comes out, you are going to feel a love and a feeling that you've never felt.
Like no other.
And you try and like picture it and feel it. And gotta be honest, man, when I made that, I've seen people on Instagram too, when I was paying off debt, I've seen people like pay off debt and like come to tears. And I'm like, is this, what are they serious? Like they just made a student loan payment.
Right,
Dude,
right.
when I pressed submit, I had my Insta story already. I broke down, man. And
Yep.
I tell people all the time, like it is a feeling like no other. And
I want to confess something real quick.
oh yeah, let's go.
I've
This
never
is what they paid for,
That's
JJ.
right. That's right. I've actually I don't think I've ever said this to anybody before, and you brought something up. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm saying this. But so I remember still clear as day being in my cubicle, listening back when I listened to Dave Ramsey every single day. I would listen to the debt free screams. Oh my
Dude,
gosh.
I know, dude,
Dude, I would be
I'm with
in
you.
my yes, I would be in my cubicle and I'm putting myself in their shoes. The ones that got me the most was where like the spouse was on the journey with them, a couple, and they had a family and kids, and during the process, like one of them got cancer and then ended up passing away, and then the wife or the husband did it in honor of their name. Like
There was some heavy ones, dude. There was some heavy ones.
I bawled like a baby at work. And one time I had a coworker come over and I'm listening with my headphones on. I got tears rolling down my eyes, and they're like, "JJ, are you all right, dude?" I'm like, "Oh, bud, I just got something in my eye, man. I'm all right, you know." Dude, they got me so much because I would put myself in their shoes because I
Oh
was
yeah.
going through that. And it's just, and I'm a pretty emotional dude. Like, I got the beard, I got tattoos and everything, but damn it, I'm a crier.
Oh, me
I
too,
will
man.
admit it. I'm a big crier. I'm a big crybaby.
Now let me ask you this: since we're talking about crying like a baby, have you seen any debt-free screams after paying off debt? Like, what was more emotional? Because this is one thing that I thought about too. Because my wife would come in and be like, "What are you crying?" The one guy, the guy from Alaska, I think it was, the guy who looked like a biker dude. He was on with like a leather
Yes, I've
vest and
seen that
shit.
one.
Okay,
Yep. Yep.
I think I got more emotional watching them after I had done it. Before it was like, oh yeah, like I was emotional because I could feel that could be me one day.
Yeah.
But afterwards, it was like more emotional because I
You
was like,
understand what they
I
were
know
going
it.
through.
Yeah, I
Yes.
know it.
Yep.
That dude, I know that sacrifice. I made the same sacrifice. And it definitely comes down to sacrifice. There's gonna be some crappy times, man. Nobody like wakes up and is like, oh yeah, I just paid off 100K of debt and no problem, no big deal.
Yeah.
It was
Right.
great. I also want to mention because I keep using numbers, and this was another thing that I fell into. That if you're just starting to pay off debt, what I fell into in the internet was how fast everyone was doing it and how much people were paying off. Bro, it does not matter if you got $1,000 worth of student loan debt. If you tackle that and you pay it off in as fast as you can as a year, and
Mm-hmm.
another dude's got 50K and he knocks it out in 3 months, it does not matter. You are debt free, they are debt free, and both of your lives are going to be better. Don't put yourself in somebody else's shoes. When we're talking about getting emotional for other people, it was never about, oh man, they paid off more than me or they paid off less than me. That is not the issue. The issue is clap when other people win and get emotional about it. And we talk about Ramsey, and I think we'll save one day just to talk about Ramsey, but
Yeah. Yeah.
there's some debt things with Ramsey. I guess maybe this is like the baby step 2 talk that I used to be so passionate about and want to argue, but now I realize doesn't care. Like, and I don't think I've ever asked you this: Debt Snowball, Debt Avalanche.
I was a debt avalanche.
So why did you choose the Debt Avalanche over the Debt Snowball? And yeah, just why? Because
Yeah.
we know the Dave Ramsey story. Like, if math mattered, we wouldn't be in debt in the first place.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, right.
So why the debt? Was it the math? Like why
It
the
was
debt?
the math.
Because I use the Debt Snowball.
Yep. And so this is funny because we're both math guys. We're both engineering backgrounds. We're both numbers guys. So I'm going to be interested to see the difference between how you and our thought process worked out. So all I had was student loans between my wife and I, but a lot of you probably know within your total amount of student loans, you usually have like 5 or 6 different student loans that you have to pay off. You may have like a $10,000 private loan, a $4,000 public loan, another $3,000 public loan, vice versa. And all those have different interest rates. So basically my thought process was the typical avalanche process. I'm like, okay, if I have a 8% loan of my on this student loan that's worth, $4,000, and then I have a $2,000 loan that's maybe a little less, I would rather pay off the higher one first with the higher interest rate because that's going to save me a little bit more along the run. And this is what's very important with that though. I knew I was getting this debt gone regardless. The debt was going to be gone the fastest way possible, rather that be me doing the debt snowball or the debt avalanche method. This goes back to what I said earlier. You have to know yourself. You have to know that you will be physically or mentally or whatever the word I'm trying to come up with as able to keep yourself motivated to pay off that debt. Me being the type of person that can't sleep at night because I owe someone money, I knew I was going to wake up every single day trying to find the extra dollar under the couch cushion to put towards the debt, whether that be for the debt avalanche or debt snowball method. To where some people, which Brad, this may be you, I don't know, I really don't know, needed the snowball method to keep yourself motivated because you get those check marks, you get those small wins one in a row after another, which keeps you going. And there's a lot of people I think that need that. For me personally, I just didn't need the gratification up front. I knew it was all going to be over at the end. I would rather save the money now and get it gone a little faster than do the debt snowball method. So I'm very curious on your thoughts because we both have the same mindset when it comes to numbers. We just went about it a different way to pay off our debts.
I think so. Here's kind of what happened. To be honest, I didn't hear about the Debt Avalanche until probably 7, 8, maybe even 9 months into quote my debt-free journey.
Okay.
So the first time I think I started hearing about it was maybe in live streams when I was early on in the channels, way back in the baby steps Brad days, and people kept coming up with, Brad, you should avalanche. You're a math guy, and there was the first initial knee jerk reaction for me was, I'm doing really really well with debt, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Don't fix it.
I'm not going to try and jump in the spreadsheet and try and change it. And if I would have known about both on day one, like some people may be listening, that might have changed. When I did actually do the research and find out about it, for me there was two situations, one of which you touched on. Know thyself. I like to cross things off. I
Hmm.
definitely do. I am a person in my phone, my reminders and everything, like every single day when I go to bed. I'm a Matt Diavella guy. So, like, I have my list of things to do when I go to bed. I wake up, I see that list, and I cross things off, right? First thing on my list, make my bed. Start the day off with something simple, and everything snowballs from there. So, that was very, very important to me as far as checking things off. But the other thing that kept me comfortable, and this is something that you talked about, was interest rates. All of my interest rates were about the same. So the one debt that I did really avoid was credit card debt,
Hmm.
because I was never really like a credit card spender, as we'll talk about and as we've mentioned. And if you know me personally, I always had money. I was the spender. I was the lifestyle creep guy. My financial troubles were lifestyle creep. So all of my interest rates were about the same. I didn't have that booming 18% credit card. So when I did the math on the debt snowball versus the debt avalanche, because my interest rates were so small and so close, there wasn't a big deal for me. So I was thinking in my back of my head, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. My interest rates are really, really, really close. And know thyself, I'm going to be fine. With that said, after I'd been paying off debt for a year and a half or so, I had two debts left and I was doing really well. And one was my wife's student loan and one was mine. And they were different by 4%. One was 7 and one was 3. And mine was actually 3 because I got in on SoFi early, whatever. We actually switched knowing what I knew now, and we switched and we paid hers off first. But at that point, we had $3,500 going to both. It was going to be quick. But I tell people now, like like you said, it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
You're gonna pay off debt. Why are people debating debt? I have a video that debated it, so like I understand why people did, but
So
like,
did I.
yeah, like why the hell are we debating these informalities that are just,
Right.
let's just get out of debt and whatever works best for you, bro. Let's do it.
So with saying that though, let me ask you this though. Let's say there's a listener that's listening right now.
Thanks for listening, by the way.
That's right. Please leave a review. No, seriously though, let's say we got somebody listening and they may have a higher interest rate. Maybe they do have the credit card debt.
Mhm.
Knowing what you know now and where you and I are both at, what would you say about the 18 to 26% credit card interest rate they may have versus their 6% student loan?
JJ, that's a great freaking question, and the answer is very simple. Without question, I'm going to say get rid of that high interest debt first.
Okay,
If
good. I'm glad you said that because that's my answer too.
Oh, was that a deal breaker? No,
I
like
wasn't. We're breaking up. The podcast is over, Brad.
it's over. No,
Yeah.
knowing what I do know now, and I think if I told somebody that, like if I was consulting somebody and I told them that, and they're like, Brad, I really like to check things off. My
Hmm.
immediate answer is always going to be, do what keeps you motivated. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
I'm not going to be there to consult you every single day. I'm not going to be there to pat you on the back for every payment, right? But knowing what I know now, yeah, if you have that booming credit card, that is 18% is it's freaking it's killing you, bro.
I
It
want to stress on this real quick, Brad. I really that honestly, I think could be one of the worst financial things somebody could have is having a lot of credit card debt. So if you are listening and you have 5, 10, 30, $50,000 in credit card debt, please
yeah.
do your best and try and pay it off as quick as possible because that interest rate is killing you. every single month. The faster you can get that paid off, and I say this to motivate you,
Yeah.
the faster you can get that paid off, the more freeing that's going to be. You're going to be set up so much better financially. It's a deal breaker, not a deal breaker. It's just
It's a throat punch, man. You get
yes, it is. Thank you.
and it's and this is coming I'm speaking for you and you can agree, coming from two guys that now use credit cards for reward points, and that would be another
Yes.
episode.
Yes.
It's not the credit card that we're chastising here. It's
Mhm.
it's the high interest rate that goes along with it. That's the thing. If car payments or if car interest rates were 18, we'd be emphasizing that just as much.
Yep.
It's not the don't put credit card on a pedestal. It's the 18% that we need to put on a pedestal. And yes, I will agree with you 100%. Knowing what I know now after 3-4 years of doing this, if Tesla jumps 18% in a day, like everyone's going freaking crazy. And if a good stock goes up 18% in a year, you are very happy to own that stock. You won if you own a stock that went up 18% in 1 year.
Yep.
But now with the 18% credit card on an interest rate, that's how much they're winning on you. They're sitting in their office saying, I'm getting 18%.
Damn.
That's
That's deep. That's a perfect way to think about it, though.
Yeah. Like if we're sitting on the couch right now and we're talking like, oh, we got Average Money Inc. that was up 18% last
Yep.
year. Win, win, win. Let's go. But the banks are the one winning on
Wow.
that side. And
Yep.
let's go right into the next controversy, because this is something that when I was a Dave Ramsey loyalist, I got, like I said, internet wars with people. Define. Oh man, what do you say? Like your
The keyboard warriors.
yeah,
Keto stained keyboard warriors.
JJ would be like, I think your New York almost just came out. Like,
Oh, no. New York Brad. That's what I call him.
yeah, like, oh, don't make my New York come out. But all the things that I used to debate that I've changed my mindset have been because I didn't listen. That's a major problem that I have with some of those loyalists is they're not listening. And when I sat down and started to listen to intelligent people like yourself, because this is something that me and you used to argue about. You used to say, Brad, there is good debt. And I used to say, JJ, you are a crazy person. So you brought it up first years ago to me. What is the difference in your opinion? We might have different definitions of it. I don't know.
Yeah. Everybody probably does.
What is the definition of good debt and bad debt? And is there such thing as this dreaded good debt?
So it's a great question. And I'm glad you asked me that, because at the beginning of the show, I started off saying that I hate owing people money.
Mm-hmm.
But what I didn't say.
Are you going to be a hypocrite?
What I didn't say is I don't mind owing people money when that money is making me money.
Mhm.
And I think that's the quick way to give a definition on good debt. What you got to think about is consumer debt, bad debt, whatever you want to call it, is something that's costing you money every single month. So when you go buy that car, when you buy your personal home, you have a mortgage on it, whenever you have your credit card debt, your student loans, that's money that's getting taken out of your pocket every single month that you have to pay for something. That is what I would consider bad debt. Good debt is something that's making you money. So for example, I have a buy and hold rental property. I have a mortgage on that property, but I have tenants who live in that property that pay me enough money to not only one cover my mortgage, my good debt, but it also pays for all the repairs, pays for any vacancies I may have because I stock that cash away in a bank account, but it also makes me an extra 400 bones every single month. So I'm okay with having that mortgage sit there while I'm earning that extra cash every single month. Now we can get into a little bit more in depth in this episode, but I also think you can go overboard with good debt. So we'll touch on that in a little bit, but I want to know your thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, the devil's advocate is, but JJ, what happens if you don't get a tenant? And it's like, well, you have an emergency fund because you're intelligent, or you sell the property.
Well, real quick, I want to say that whenever so my wife and I are hoping to have roughly about 10 rental properties. And with each rental property, we want to have enough money stocked away for each property to be able to replace a roof, replace an AC, be able to pay the mortgage on that property for a year if we have no tenants, which honestly would never happen. But if it does, another COVID pops up or something like that, we want to be able to pay that off, or not to pay it off, but we want to be able to cover those payments. So
Yeah,
I'm
no.
glad you said that.
Yeah, and I think when you say having too much debt, if you've ever heard somebody else talking about this, it's referred to as being over leveraged. So, I mean, when it comes to good debt and bad debt, I'll even take it one step further. You use the definition, which I think is awesome, of saying debt that's making you money or going to make you money is probably considered good debt. And as somebody that's owned 3 small businesses, and one of which is the brewery is a multi-million-dollar business. If I wouldn't have taken on debt in any of my businesses, I wouldn't have had a business. And what I did was do the math. What's the return on investment? How fast am I going to be able to pay that off? The same thing when I opened my CrossFit gym. Well, I walked into an empty warehouse. I put about $25,000-$30,000 worth of equipment in that gym. And I said to myself, well, if I have this amount of members over this amount of time, all that's going to pay itself off quickly. I'm going to pay some interest, but after it's paid off, that interest is going to pay itself back 100 times over. The brewery, we exploded so fast, and in the brewery industry, things are expensive, but the margins are also very, very awesome. So it's like right now in the brewery, there's probably $500,000 worth of stainless steel in that place between the piping and the tanks and stuff. And yes, I could have saved up money and bought another fermenter, saved up money, bought another fermenter. But during that time, if I would have leveraged some debt and bought all my equipment all at once, which would have got me a better deal, and had it all there, I could keep up with the accelerated growth of that business. So I think business is a one, like right now, this podcast is in debt. You bought microphones, the headphones, webcam. We're in debt right now to this, but we see the potential of one day possibly making money. Granted, yes, it's a labor of love. If it makes a couple of bucks, great. But you can't go into it thinking, I'm going to cash flow everything, because it might hold back your business. And as far as the mortgage, like, I consider my personal residence a good debt. Now, it's a very fine line, and I'll get stricken down for that. But
I'm interested. So I disagree with you on that.
Okay, so here,
and this is a perfect AJ versus Brad podcast moment. This is our first disagreement, so I'm excited for this. Let's go.
Okay, and I'm curious to hear your point. So, Dave Ramsey says you should have a 15-year fixed rate mortgage and you should be able to put 20% down your house. All right. So I did those things. I have a 15-year mortgage, which right now has 12 years left on it. I actually put 30% down on my house, all in cash. And in the recent times, I was able to refinance my mortgage for 3%. I know pretty confidently that I can get a return on my investment elsewhere that exceeds my mortgage. So when I look at both on paper, and I know you're trying to pay off your mortgage right now, and I also know that you're paying off your mortgage because it's going to give you some stability as far as your expenses are concerned,
Right.
And it's also going to give you peace of mind. I don't need the peace of mind of not having the mortgage at 3%, and I don't really need to free up that money with my current financial situation and my job security. And I think I'm at a position where if you have that money in the bank, I have the money, I could pay off my mortgage. I have it in cash. So when I say that I think my primary residence is good debt, I have to put the asterisk on it that I have the money to pay it off if I needed to. If whatever reason they close my school tomorrow, in these times, it could happen, I could pay off my mortgage tomorrow.
I see what route you're going with this, and I agree with you on here.
So I'm holding cash to protect myself if I do lose my job, because I want to be able to live. I got to feed my kids. I got to pay my bills. And putting all that money and paying off my mortgage and then losing my job the next week would put me in a pretty big hole. Because you can only the value of your home is only worth what you can sell for.
Right.
So let's just say I have $200,000 in the bank. I lose my job tomorrow. I have $200,000.
Yeah, you can live on that for a long time.
I pay off my mortgage tomorrow. I have no money. I lose my job. What situation is better for me? That's why I consider it good debt. So
Okay.
that's kind of where I'm at with the primary residence thing. I think if your interest rate is low enough, then maybe we'll put a little less than 4%.
Yeah.
Three is a great interest rate because I have good credit. Oh, we'll get to credit. So many things we could freaking
I
talk
know,
about.
man. We got a bunch of long list of things to talk about.
So tell me why you disagree.
Yeah. So, and you make a good point. I totally understand where you're coming from. You're kind of thinking, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're kind of thinking as you're using that leverage on your mortgage to keep that cash in your bank account for like a safety thing. And that's kind of why that's good debt is there, because you get to keep that cash there. I get that.
It's almost like a home equity line of credit.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
And you're just funding it yourself.
Mhm.
You don't have to pay somebody to do that.
Right.
So here's my thought on that. I personally still think that would be considered bad debt because your personal residence isn't bringing you any income in. So yeah, you may have the cash sitting in your bank. You have the cash sitting there that you could pay off the mortgage, you could live off of if you lose your job, but it's still, so let's say you lose your job, right?
Mhm.
You still have to make a mortgage payment. You still have to fix your AC unit if it goes out. You still have to replace your roof if something happens with that. So that 2000, let's just say it's 200,000 you have in the bank. If you have that 200K in the bank, you lose your job, some of that 200K is going to get ate up from your mortgage, your good debt. So I would look at that as that being bad debt because that's money coming out of the accounts if you would happen to lose your job. Now let's turn it around. Let's say your primary residence, for those of you that listened to last week's episode, Bryce, he started off house hacking. Let's say you had somebody living in your house with you that was renting a room, then I could see that being good debt because you're making an income from that property. So that's kind of my, I guess, thought process. And I'm excited for these down the road, these Brad and JJ, difference of opinions. Go ahead, let's go.
Let me play devil's advocate back.
Yeah.
So I said this is like a HELOC. I also have a
Mhm.
HELOC on my property.
Okay.
And I use that HELOC to make me money. So
Okay.
a large percentage of the money that I have tied up in the flips with John Scholler right now is part of a HELOC at a super, super low interest rate. It's cutting into what he's paying me, which is still returning me more than the average of the stock market. So if I'm using the value of my house for a HELOC, that's a little bit different, right?
Yeah, I would say it is, yeah.
All right. So is the HELOC good debt?
Good debt. Yeah, if it's making you income, I would say it is. Like if someone would take a HELOC out to go buy a rental property, I would say that's good debt.
So you're strictly your only criteria for good debt is it needs to be making you money.
Yes. I personally don't think I would take out debt considered to be good debt if it wasn't making me money. Because that's honestly the only criteria I have
Okay.
that I think. But here's the other thing. We go back to the business thing, growing a business.
Mm-hmm.
I do agree. Man, this is a tough one, Brad. Gosh dang it. I would say, like, for the most part, starting businesses, I would almost say try to cash flow as much as possible. But you do come into growing pains where you have to take those next steps if you want to grow. Now, here's a question I have for you, since you are someone who has had multiple businesses from starting from scratch and have grown them to where they are now. What would you say to someone who has a problem with taking on debt, period? Let's say they're starting a business right now, or maybe they've had a business for 2 years and they're at a point where they could either cash flow something and grow slow, or they could take out the good debt and grow the business faster, but they don't feel like that's right to them. They know deep down they shouldn't do that, but they know the business will grow tenfold, 10x if they take out the good debt. So what are your thoughts on that listener right now who's in that position, who mentally doesn't want to take out the good debt, but they know the business would grow faster if they did? What would you say to that person?
I lived it. When I started my debt-free journey, I had just opened the brewery. And my partner, Chris, he was YOLO life. He was like, buy it all. He was robbed from Peter to pay Paul. And I was, debt is bad. Debt is bad. And it caused a little friction in our relationship. But what ended up happening was we got mediation. We found it was, once again, we weren't listening to each other. And back to this, like with the spouse we talked, it's about listening sometimes. And when we debate, oftentimes we're so caught in our position that we don't hear the other person's position. I wasn't listening to why Chris thought that we needed to take on some debt. And Chris wasn't listening to why he thought it was important to me not to. It wasn't until someone said, Brad, shut up. Chris, don't speak. Now, Brad, tell Chris why you want to be debt free. Chris, tell Brad why you want to take on debt. Let's talk numbers. Who's right? Mm-hmm. Now, it turned out we were able to compromise. Chris wasn't allowed to YOLO and get things that were unnecessary. And I had to accept the numbers and knowing that this was a business. That's why Dubco was so successful, because of the compromise. And that's the same in a relationship. What's important to my wife, Tara, is not valuable to me. And the fights that we used to have early on when we were paying off debt, it was because I wasn't listening to what was valuable to her life and the things that made her life better. And she, just because they weren't the things that I thought were important. For me, it was, you want to go get your nails done every other month for $25? And she was finally like, it's not about getting my nails done, Brad. It's about going. It's about getting out of the house. It's about listening to some headphones. It's about bringing my girlfriends and having a mimosa. It's about feeling pretty and feeling confident in myself. And to me, Brad, that's worth $25 a month. Just like a Starbucks coffee every Friday is important to you, and I don't say anything to you about it.
Or a PBR.
Or yeah. How many when she was pregnant and not drinking, and I was bitching at her about money, and she's like, "How much money did you spend on PBRs this week?"
Yep.
So I think it's compromise, it's listening, and somebody that's in that business position, you have to communicate. A business partner, depending on the business, becomes essentially like a marriage. Chris was my wife. He was my work wife.
Yep.
And because we had the same issues and the same arguments, that some married people do when it comes to money. And that's really what I tell people is neither of you are right.
Mm-hmm.
Your YOLO partner isn't right, and you're not right.
Right.
But there is a middle ground that is right. And knowing what I know now, I'm glad that we got that mediation, because one, it probably would have destructed our relationship. The brewery definitely wouldn't have done as well, because now I know the importance of good debt and leveraging good debt for a return on investment. So I'm glad that I got that. And the kind of like the last piece of the debt that I want to talk to you about, and another one that comes up as we wrap this up, because I'm sure everyone's getting to work right now. Hopefully you're sitting in the parking lot and you will not go into work. You're going to be late to work
until we are done.
because we got one more nugget for you coming. Is I did it, and I know you just did it. And I remember when you told me about it, you were a little bit nervous, a little bit apprehensive. Talk about what it was like to sell off investments to pay off debt.
Oh, buddy.
Because when I had a brokerage account and I had debt, and I always told myself if my debt ever reached my brokerage account, I'd pay it off. Now, at that time, I never thought that my debt would get low enough for that, or that my brokerage would ever get high enough. And when I got to last October, I had $15,000 worth of debt, and in my Robinhood account, I had $15,000. And I said, Tara, I'm selling this all. And everybody called me a donkey for it. Everybody. Mm-hmm. And I think you lived that with me. And I think that was a little bit why you were apprehensive, because I got tore up on the internet.
Yeah.
I got lit on YouTube. When I told people I did that, they're like, you idiot, you're going to return so much than your mortgage, than your student loans.
Well, especially the space we're in too, like we're all investing YouTubers. So.
And yeah, no, I got lit up for it. I'm curious if you did, but like, I'm still happy to this day.
Yeah.
And people still ask me that every day. Like, Brad, I got like $5,000 worth of debt and I got $8,000 invested. I'm like, be debt free. You'll get that $5,000 back immediately.
Yes.
Tell me your experience and like what that talk was like with your wife.
For those of you that don't know, I recently I had on my YouTube channel, I talk about like my Robinhood portfolio, and I kind of use that to showcase to people how I'm purchasing stocks, what I look for in companies when I buy stocks. So I had a Robinhood portfolio built up of about a little over $30,000. And my situation was a little bit different than Brad. So I didn't have $30,000 left in my mortgage, but I was close to it. I'm still almost paying off the mortgage as we speak. But I came to a point in time with thinking about selling off the entire Robinhood portfolio to pay off or to help speed up the payoff of the mortgage. And one of the main reasons I do need to talk about this is the whole reason why I had such a immediate to want to pay off this mortgage was because I knew I wanted to take that leap into full-time entrepreneurship of the YouTube channel. I wanted to go full-time, and having that mortgage paid off was going to be kind of that last item to check off the list to be like, okay, I'm good to go on this. If something goes south with the YouTube channel, I'm not making money. At least I know I can control my expenses. When you have when you have a mortgage, you have to pay that mortgage every single month, or else the bank's gonna take your damn house. To where if it's paid off, I mean, you still got to pay your taxes and insurance, but if it's paid off, you don't have that big lump sum mortgage, which is the probably majority of Americans is the largest expense they have every single month.
Amen, brother.
So I told myself, I said, if I'm making this leap and I'm going full-time on YouTube, full-time entrepreneur, I would like to have the least amount of expenses as possible. That way my wife and I can control our lifestyle. If I have a rough month on YouTube and I only make a few $1,000s, I'm like, okay, Lindsay, we need to cut back on the spending this next month and we'll be fine. And then we'll move on to the next one and see what happens. So basically, to sum everything up, man, it was hard. And I remember texting you about it. I remember like, Brad, I need your thoughts, but I wanting to do
You knew
this.
what I was going to say.
I know.
You knew what I was going to say.
Well, I know you did it already. So quickly to answer the question, I'm glad I did it because that mortgage is going to be paid off that much faster now.
Mm-hmm.
And the cool thing about it is I'm going to have that freedom. I'm going to be able to enjoy myself a little more because I won't have that stress. So kind of what you mentioned, if anybody's out there who has that $8,000, in brokerage and they have $5,000 in debt, or maybe it's on a much higher scale, you're going to get it built up back so much faster. And here's another thing I do want to say though, and Brad, this applied to you as well. I know it did. We also had other investments in the bank. Mm-hmm. Now, this isn't something I would recommend going and selling your 401k and pulling out all your money in your Roth to go do this. This was a taxable brokerage account.
Great point.
That we weren't getting penalized on. We're not like, I would never recommend somebody go pull money out of a retirement account to go pay off their debts.
Right.
This was strictly something that was able to pull the money out that wasn't going to hurt me whatsoever, minus the return I may have missed on down the road from not having that money invested in the market right then. So to quickly answer your question.
To make a long story longer.
Yeah, right. I'm glad I did it. I really am. I'm glad I did it, and I would do it again. So I hope that.
And we'll talk brokerage accounts in a future episode. And I think it goes without saying that I think both of us will agree that brokerage accounts come after your retirements and after your Roths. I mean, so I think that will definitely be a talk. And JJ, I'm done with my beer, man. So I think it's time to wrap this one up. It's incredible. I mean, I learned a couple things about you, and that's kind of what we've been doing here. And we've been having some talks, and we finally just decided to press record. Do you have anything to say before we sign off here, JJ?
I got to say it again, guys. Please, if you haven't already, leave the podcast a review. That really does help, especially with us being a new podcast. I mean, there's some times where you can search on Apple or Spotify and we don't even pop up yet because we're so brand new. We're the new kids on the block. Those reviews that you guys are leaving us, we had one today. I posted on Instagram. It was incredible.
I was gonna say, don't be too nice. We've already told you we're emotional. Right. I almost came to tears when I read that freaking review today.
Dude, it's amazing.
Don't bring us to tears, please.
Maybe we'll have to read a review or something at the end of every show just to kind of show our appreciation, because I read all of them. I read every single review that I can find. So that really does help with the podcast. It helps us get noticed more, which in return is going going to help the podcast, which in return is going to help us put out better quality content. So leaving those reviews really does help us out, guys. So I for those of you that have left a review, thank you. And for those of you that are going to leave a review after listening, thank you guys so much, because it really does help.
Yeah, and we also we show some of those awesome reviews on our Instagram and things like that. And guys, that is not like us pandering to your reviews. When we text back and forth and we share them with each other, and it really fires us up, and and it really helps us know that we are bringing value to you guys. And when we thank you guys, we mean it wholeheartedly from the bottom of our hearts. We're also going to be asking for questions in places like Instagram. So get over to Average Money Podcast and follow us on Instagram. Also, we have YouTube. We were posting clips. People have been asking for the full episodes. We will start to post the full episodes eventually when we get to it. Right now, we're trying to once again grow that traffic through the podcast scene. So we're going to wait. We'd like to have you listen to the full episodes through the services that you use. Guys, right now we're adding services every day, but we have all of the big ones on there. Apple, Spotify. Some of you are probably listening to that. And we're 3 episodes in, man, and this is it's awesome. I'm having so much fun. I appreciate your time, JJ, and I appreciate the time that everybody took. We'll catch you on next week, and who knows, JJ? Do we know what we're talking about next week, or we're just gonna F it? We're gonna do it live. We're just gonna do it live.
YOLO, baby. YOLO.
We're gonna do it live. We got some more awesome guests, and like I said, if you have any ideas, if you have any questions, please reach out to us. Let us know. Cheers, guys. We'll catch you on the next one.